Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Abigail Desjardins. She is the Venture Portfolio Director, Director of Enterprise Services at NSIN, and U.S. Department of Defense. So she's amazing. Here she is.
Thank you. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. By show of hands, how many of you are familiar with Defense Innovation Unit? Handful. How about the National Security Innovation Network? Oh, more hands. That's fantastic. Okay. So yes, I am a Department of Defense employee, which means I have many additional duties on top of my official job. So Crystal was correct. My primary job is the Venture Portfolio Director, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then the additional duties is the Director of Enterprise Services, which encompasses many, many different elements. But I am very thankful for the contractor team that I have. One of them is here with me today, Megan. But I cannot do this without the fantastic people that we have supporting us. So thank you to all of them. All right, without much further ado, so the National Security Innovation Network has gone through a couple of name changes, but we have landed right now on NSIN. We are organizationally aligned within the Defense Innovation Unit, and that is a recent change with the appointment of Doug Beck to the Director of Innovation, or sorry, the Defense Innovation Unit as a direct report to the Secretary of Defense. So we are still getting used to what does that mean to now be organizationally aligned to the Secretary of Defense, no longer within one of the sub-elements. We have been around for just 6 years at this moment in time. We started as a fledgling concept out of NYU in New York City to kind of prove, does it work to have the Department of Defense innovate? What does that look like? And since then, we have grown. We are now officially a program of record within the department, meaning we have a budget. It is very nominal. So thankfully, those on the Hill, just a few feet away, have enjoyed what we have done. And every year we have enjoyed some additional funds that come our way. But all of what we do is focused on helping to innovate the industrial base within the United States. That mission has been expanded most recently with Doug's desire to have us collaborate with our international partners and allies. So now we are very much under the mindset that the United States cannot innovate our defense industrial base alone. We need to do this with our our international partners and allies. That the United States is excellent in some areas, and there are other areas where we have fantastic capabilities that we need to harness and leverage. And so we are embarking upon several international activities which are actually leveraging the IdeaScale platform today. We have 2 prize challenges, which we award non-dilutive, so we just give money to the best vendors, and we're doing that in partnership with IDEX, which is the Indian version of DIU overseas. So we sit at this intersection of the Department of Defense, venture, which includes venture capital, and academia. So recognizing that, much like the previous speaker articulated, that people are where ideas come from, and the best people don't always work for us. We have a recognition that the Department of Defense has not harnessed the fantastic and amazing talent and technologies, capabilities, process change that exists across the entire United States. For far too long, we have been focused on the major vendors and primes that exist within like a, 5-mile proximity to the Pentagon. And so we launched a national network where we have folks who are embedded right now. I think it is in 26 states, 37 people who have a responsibility for establishing trust and rapport, not just with the Department of Defense mission partners who are based in their geographic areas, but also with the academic institutions, the students, the venture capitalists, and the startups, to include early to mid-stage startups. But we cannot innovate without having trust, and we establish that trust by having people who are embedded geographically in proximity to those fantastic epicenters of innovation and thought. Let's see what else we want to say. The slide's out of date because it was approved for public release, so apologies. But the bottom right, we have just announced our on-ramp hub. So it was the Mission Acceleration Center. It's now the on-ramp hub, which is meant to be one of the front doors to the Department of Defense. They are brick and mortar buildings in Arizona, Hawaii, Kansas, Seattle, and I always miss the last one when I do the list. It'll come back to me at some point in time, unless Megan, do you know? Ohio, thank you. These are places that we have chosen as areas of interest for the department for a variety of reasons, and they are meant to be a collaborative space. So unlike the experience of walking into this beautiful building, there will be no real barriers. So anyone who wants to work with the department, anyone who wants to be partnered with a venture capitalist who is interested in investing in the dual use space can walk in. So we're going to try this out, see how it goes. We have one in Seattle that has been in execution for the past year, and that was in partnership with the Navy. It went really well. So we said, let's do this in additional locations. So more to come on what that looks like and timelines for rolling out. But each location will have access to the IdeaScale platform that we have. And I've got a couple of great ideas that percolated today about how I want to better leverage the platform at each one of those on-ramp hub locations. Let's see if I forgot anything there. All right, so I've touched upon this, right? We've got these 3 pillars of activity at NSIN. Network building, I talked about that with our regional network team. Now that we are firmly embedded within the Defense Innovation Unit, we are also figuring out what does it look like to be aligned to the activities that DIU is taking lead on. So the Joint Mission Acceleration Directorate based out of Indo-PACOM, the replicator activities. So all of those things are percolating, and we will play a role in helping to feed amazing technology and capabilities that we're sourcing from academia, from the early stage venture community, and from our international partners into those activities. The second thing that we do is programming. So that's my first official hat, is the venture portfolio. So I've alluded to prize challenges. We also do accelerator programs. Those are multi-week cohort programs that we do centered around a particular DoD problem set. And that one, we've got a demo day happening up in Boston in December. It's open to the public. If anyone is in Boston, December 3rd, and wants to go to Gillette Stadium, you're welcome to come. Just let me know. But that one, we have a 5% acceptance rate. So we are seeing many, many more companies apply for participation in that programming, which is phenomenal, given the fact that there is no funding given out and there is no guarantee of a contract on the back end. It is all about customer discovery. It's all about having the opportunity to engage with Department of Defense mission partners through the course of the cohort accelerator program. We also do our best to help bring in other folks who have interests that are very, very similar, which brings me to the next program that we have, which is called Challenges. I mentioned we're doing 2 with India right now. We also did one, which I wish that he was still here. I think he just left, for the Navy on naval tank inspection. So we looked at detecting corrosion in water tanks, both on land and in ships. And so we did that in 2 phases where we did an open call to industry. We had, I want to say, 40 companies apply. Many of them actually were coming from the oil industry, who were very interested in breaking into the Defense Department. And they went through and they pitched their ideas. So at the time, we did not have IdeaScale. So we used a different platform, which I'm super happy we're not using anymore, but I will not mention it. And we have, we invited them, the top performing companies, to go out to San Diego to actually demonstrate, because proof is in the pudding, proof is in seeing the capabilities. We had one the Navy was in love with through their pitch, absolutely in love with it. Like, this is it. I've got $1 million. I want to award a contract. And then they saw it get loaded off the back of a semi truck with a forklift. And they said, just kidding, this is not going to work on a naval tank. So we said, that's great. So that company went back, took that information, and now they're working on pivoting their solution based upon the feedback that they received. And we look to see what comes next for that company. But at NSIN, we sit kind of now at the Secretary of Defense level. So we have a recognition that not all problems are unique. And so I mentioned the the water example that we did a challenge around because I wish that DC Water was in attendance. They would have seen the solutions that had been pitched. They may have been able to identify some really fantastic capabilities that the Department of Defense is interested in and maybe investing in. And there can be efficiencies that are gained, not just at the Department of Defense level, nor the intelligence community level, but also at the federal level, or sorry, the state level, local level. There we go. And then last but not least, we have other programming that's focused on tech transfer. So we have programming that's really focused in on looking at tech that's been developed inside of federal labs. So UARCs, which are University Research something, I'm terrible at acronyms, FFRDCs, Federally Funded Research Development Centers, and then also just at our federal labs. So Army Research Lab, Air Force Research Lab, technology that's been developed for a particular application, or just that scientists loved their idea and they just wanted to do it. And so we go in, we do a commercial viability assessment of that technology. And then we bring it out to industry, either through pairing that through entrepreneurs who are just excited about seeing what they could do with some government funded tech, or to startups to see if they'd be willing to pivot their solution offering to take that technology into account. And we've had phenomenal success. We have spun out, I want to say 50 startups in the last 4 years through that programming, and countless licensing, CRADAs and all of that. So it's been really exciting to see what you can do when you intentionally expose ideas developed in one area to a different population. And then the other side of NSIN, which I do not do enough justice to, is the talent portfolio. And the talent portfolio really focuses in on people, individuals. We have fellowship programs, internship programs. We leverage capstones that every single academic institution has and said, hey, wouldn't it be a great idea if instead of letting these students work on ideas that may not be of interest to us, we intentionally inject Department of Defense problem sets into the capstone programs. And then at the end, maybe we get a really great idea, or maybe we get a process improvement. And so that program, I have no idea actually how many institutions we have, but it's a lot across the United States. And it's not just the R1 academic institutions, it's R2. We're also looking at unrolling this at community colleges, as well as at high schools. So we've got a lot of ideas of how do we help harness the talent and bring it into the department. And then the third pillar that we have is focus on transition. So the other hat I have, Director of Enterprise Services, I have a group called the Transition Cell. So it's really, really focused on helping to ensure that the folks who touch our network, either through our programming or through contacts with our regional network team, have someone that they can go to who can answer their questions, who can say, I see this fantastic request for proposals or a broad agency announcement or this challenge idea. What does the government mean? And how do I do this? And what do I do? Or I am in consult with a VC firm and they just gave me the following terms. Is that good? I don't know. So I'm a college student, so help me. And so we help provide them with advisory support so that they can actually apply the knowledge that they're gaining from the conversations with our team and not walk away going, we still don't know what to do. So the on-ramp hubs kind of fit into that transition pillar as well. As you can tell, we're really focused on helping to ensure that the fantastic ideas and technology and processes that we're harvesting from across the United States and internationally are making their way in some way, shape, or form, as long as it makes sense, right? So we are also really focused on helping matchmake and partnering. So I'm the first to say that the hundreds of companies we engage with in our programming on a yearly basis are most likely not going to get a prime contract. It's not going to happen. Doesn't mean their solution isn't going to get fielded or tested or rolled up. Most likely that's going to happen through a partnership agreement, through some sort of subcontract agreement or some other means. And so one of the ways that we have been looking at IdeaScale is to try and figure out how we incentivize that partnership, that interactive, that collaboration piece of that IdeaScale offers. Because we are dealing with companies, we are dealing with people who want to protect their intellectual property. So it's a little bit tricky to figure out how we do that, but we're not giving up. We're going to try and figure it out. All right, let's let's see. So I mentioned, our national network. Here's just a lovely map because everyone loves maps that shows where we are. This is on the right-hand side, kind of a snapshot of the programs that I talked about. This is a snapshot. These are not all of our programs. We very much follow the lean startup methodology. So we have a ton of pilot activities that we are doing on any given basis. So we build, measure, learn. We figure out, is this something that worked? And then if it works and pending a budget line for us, we will execute it the following year. One thing I do want to quickly highlight is the X-Force Fellowship Program. That is our summer internship program. And this year was the first year that the interns actually used IdeaScale as a way of sharing their ideas and what they were working on. And our program manager was a bit skeptical at the beginning. And I think by the end of the 3-4 month cohort, I think they were bought in. We had really great interaction amongst the team of fellows, which was, I think, around 250 this year. Where they were able to kind of post ideas, they were able to bonus off of each other. And for us, for me as a global admin, I was floored by what I was seeing come through. I don't necessarily have enough time to read them all, but man, was it exciting. I was super happy we had 2 program managers plus a portfolio director who was focused on reading all that stuff. I did not have time. So that was one exciting thing. Everyone loves an NSIN by the number slide. This is always outdated the moment that you put it up. So I won't spend too much time on this, except for I'm personally very excited about the right-hand side of the slide, which talks to what happens after companies, including those that go through our challenges program that have been leveraging IdeaScale to date, have gone on to do. The number on the top is private capital funding. So it's not because of participation in our programming, but it speaks to the caliber of the companies that we are engaging with. That one is now over $10 billion. One of our Propel companies just secured a Series B of $100 million. I think it went public last week on Friday. So things like that are happening on a routine basis. And it is because of our intentional engagement with the community, with the Department of Defense, mission partners, to help ensure that we are pulling in the best technology, the best companies to meet the needs. The bottom right, I don't know the exact updated number for this one, but it's definitely over $3 billion that the companies have gone on to secure after they participated in our programming, which is pretty dang phenomenal, given the fact that that stat is from 2016. It's a hockey puck, right? So not every single company is getting ginormous contracts, but we have had really great luck with companies going on. And I will also say they are not all SBIR dollars, which is something that I'm personally very proud of. So in a nutshell, that's NSIN. It's a really exciting organization within the department. We are, as I mentioned, at a time of change as we are fully integrating within the Defense Innovation Unit. But what will remain persistent for us is the focus on helping to ensure that we are innovating the industrial base by expanding the innovation base. We are, as I mentioned, we are embarking upon a lot of international activities. So we have I mentioned we've launched the 2 challenges with India. There will be more forthcoming. The first 2 are very Navy focused. We will be doing one for the Army, for the Air Force, and for the Marine Corps element. That's kind of akin to over there. And then we'll also be doing some other programming under the broader InduSX umbrella. We are going to be doing a challenge with Australia and the UK very soon. We'll be launching that one on the IdeaScale platform in December. And we are looking at helping to establish partnerships with Singapore and Japan to also help bring in some of the technology and the ideas that, as I mentioned, our international partners and allies have within their industrial bases. So with that, I will pause. I know I spoke very quickly and it was a lot of information, but if you guys have any questions, I will be happy to field them. Otherwise, I may have just given us time back and put us back on track. Yes. Oh my gosh, there are so many. Which Valley of Death? I'm sure Sabra, who just walked in, will probably address this in her remarks as well. I think at last count, there are 5 or 6 valleys of death. So it really depends upon where you are sitting and which valley of death you are looking at. The traditional valley of death is taking a piece of technology and getting it across from the wireframe or the prototype phase into a production contract, or getting it into a program of record. But there's also the valleys of death of, I've got a great idea and I have no idea who to go talk to, and how do I move beyond this phase? There's the valley of death of, I've got a great idea, and I don't have access to a testing environment, so I cannot advance it beyond a TRL 7 or 5. And so it's helping those companies try and advance over that particular valley, but there's a lot of them. Any other questions? I'm coming.
Good afternoon. How do you project now that you're under a new alignment under the SecDev? That is amazing. First of all, to have that level of authority, right? I want to say at your fingertips, if you will. So what is your short-term plans to leverage being under the SecDev?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. Time is of the essence. We got to figure out what our big ticket asks are, so that we can work on those. But thankfully, Mr. Doug Beck, is at the helm of helping us to figure out how do we best leverage the fact that we're now sitting at the Secretary of Defense level. For us at NSIN, we have always been cross services. So I myself am an Army employee. My colleagues are either from the Navy or from the Air Force. So we have always had a focus on working across the services to ensure that we are pulling in the problem owners from every single service when it's appropriate and when it's applicable. So that is a big focus now of being elevated to SecDef, is that we are able to help really ensure that we're working united in breaking down those stovepipes that do exist, and helping to ensure that if a capability is identified or funded at a production level, for the Army, but it meets a Navy need, that we can help ensure that that is also made aware. Additionally, sitting at the SecDef level means that we're able to have an impact on what are some of those persistent and very annoying barriers to companies being able to access the department. And so we're able to actually now be at a position, at a level where we can help to raise those to the appropriate level and have a very, very strong voice. If you've heard Doug speak recently, he talks about DIU 2.0, or DIU 1.0 was making sure that the building, meaning the Pentagon, was going out and talking to companies. And so a metric of success, did the meeting happen? Did somebody go in? DIU 2.0 was showing that you can leverage other transaction authority to get capabilities very, very quickly prototyped and then put onto a production contract. And now DI 3.0 is about making that strategic impact. And so it's now having a seat at the broader tables when they are going through the JSIDS process, or when they are going through the bigger requirements conversations, to help ensure that we are thinking about innovation first and foremost, and that we are doing what we can to help ensure that those barriers are removed or lowered.